So technology is not my friend. I played the outro video first, so I'm still here. I didn't leave. I just started. So hello, everyone. This is Tommy Hensel, and welcome to my Cooking with Tommy VIP page. Or if you're watching on Table for One, welcome to Table for One, or to my YouTube channel, wherever you happen to be viewing this. If you're viewing this later, it's probably on YouTube. So thank you for tuning in. I'm excited to be here for the second time this week. I'm still working on the technology, but I think I'm getting the handle of it. I've shifted the laptop a little bit so that I don't have to look so much away in order to see comments. But tonight, I wanted to sort of dive straight into what we're focusing on tonight. I'm going to do 3 different demos for you tonight. The first one is an appetizer. The second one is a simple dessert. And the third one is a cocktail. And so with the appetizer, I'm going to make it and it will cook while we're here because it only takes about 10 minutes to cook and about 5 minutes to rest. The dessert, I'm going to be able to prep all the way up to the point where it needs to chill. So you're not going to be able to see the final product except for the fact that I made a batch last night, or a smaller batch. So I'm going to bring out that so you'll see what the final product would look like once it's had a chance to finish setting and chilling. But we're going to start with the simple appetizer. This is a Pampered Chef recipe, and I'm doing it pretty straight through the way that Pampered Chef has laid it out. And tomorrow I will post this recipe on the VIP cooking page for anybody who wants to see it. What I'm going to be demoing tonight is a simple party appetizer. It's brown sugar Dijon brie. Now, one of the components of the recipe is a baguette that you've sliced on diagonals. I had a small loaf of French bread at home, so I'm using that instead of a baguette because I didn't want to go out and buy a baguette since I had bread already. So what you're going to see tonight is bread that's not as pretty as a baguette. It's still sliced on a diagonal, but it doesn't quite do the same thing as a baguette does. And I'll explain, with the baguette, it makes a beautiful arrangement because Pampered Chef suggests that you bake this brie on the round pizza stone. If you don't have a round pizza stone, you could bake it and then put it on a round platter, ring it with the bread, and then it's a pretty presentation. But for now, we're going to start just very simple recipe. We have an 8-ounce wheel of brie, or you can use camembert. It has half a cup of almonds, a half a cup of packed brown sugar, and a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. That's it. At the end, I'm going to give you a couple of variations if you don't like those ingredients or want to try different things that you might be able to enjoy. But for tonight, we're going to start first with chopping up the almonds. Now, half of the almonds go into the mix that you're going to spread on the brie, and then the other half go sprinkled on top. So what I'm going to do, I have a half a cup of almonds here. I like to pre-measure things in these great little measuring bowls that Pampered Chef has. I love them because I measured this hours ago and I put the top on it and it was good. What I'm going to do is divide the almonds more or less in half. And I'm going to chop up the ones that are going into the mixture a little bit finer than the others. This is the wonderful food chopper. It's really my favorite Pampered Chef product. There's many different ways to do this. Okay, so these are the ones that are going to be a little finer. I can get my aggressions out sometimes on this. There we go. So those are a little bit finer. The ones that I'm going to sprinkle on the top, I'm going to chop a little more deliberately and not so quickly to keep them, maybe one more, to keep them a little chunkier. Quick and easy. So first of all, I'm just going to throw the finely chopped almonds into the batter bowl. I love this scraper too. I use it all the time. There we are. So that's about a quarter cup of relatively finely chopped almonds. I've got a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. And I love these measure-all cups from Pampered Chef because with something like packed brown sugar especially, it's awesome because you can pack it down really tight and then poof, it goes out and it's not stuck and you're not trying to like scrape everything out. So I'm going to take the long skinny scraper here, and I may actually, because the brown sugar was a little hard, so what I'm going to have to do is use a slightly harder spoon on this to break up the brown sugar, because my brown sugar had been sitting for a little while, so it's not as soft as it should be. But you need to incorporate the brown sugar, the almonds, and the Dijon mustard fairly well. Not a lot of liquid, so what you're seeing is the Dijon is giving you just a little bit of structure, but it's not making this wet. It's just basically helping the ingredients to come together, and it's giving you that little kick of heat that you want. I'm going to be using this little spreader to spread it. So there we go. Awesome. I'm going to move this out of the way because it's going to sprinkle on the top when we're done. All right. Now we have our wheel of brie. You know, like I love the Great British Baking Show, and Mary Berry always talks about when you're slicing a cake in half that you actually come to the side and you do it all the way around. Well, I kind of do the same thing. I make a little incision all the way around so that I have a guide, and then I just keep going slightly deeper each time until I finally get it cut in half. That way you can ensure that the two halves are relatively the same size. All right, so the recipe calls for using the pizza stone. I don't have a pizza stone because I broke mine a while ago and I haven't gotten a new one. But I do have this amazing bar pan, and you can see it's super dark because I've had it for probably, gosh, almost 20, maybe 20 years. So it's great. Here's what you do. I've got the bread. I've already pre-sprayed it with a little bit of oil, but I'm going to spray some more on before we're done. You put half of the brie with the cut side up. And then you can use this little spreader to spread half of the mixture onto the brie. I know that there are some of you out there that are either allergic to, well, it's just me, so I'm going to use my fingers. Forgive me for that, but nobody else is going to eat this, so you know what? I'll just touch it. If you're allergic to nuts or averse to nuts in some way, leave them out. You know, the trick is to make sure that you have the heat from the Dijon mustard and the sweetness of the brown sugar. That's about half. All right, so that's about half. Then you take the other half of the brie and put that on top, again, with the cheese side up. And you spread the rest of the brie, of the mixture onto the top. I do love this little spreader. I just got it recently, and I've only had it for 2 days, and I continue to use it constantly. Okay, so now we have the 2 layers. You take the additional almonds, as many as you want, and put them on top. And again, if you're somebody who doesn't like nuts or doesn't like almonds, leave them off. That's probably enough, actually. I think I'll save these for something else. All right, so that's ready. That part is ready. Now, what we're going to do is use this kitchen spritzer to spray oil. It would be on the baguettes. I try to do it about 12 times to get up some steam. What I love about this is you're using whatever oil you want. In this case, it's avocado oil, and you're spraying it. No aerosol. It's awesome. This is one of my very favorite Pampered Chef products. Got a couple of comments. Great. Oh, and for the almond substitution, you can use anything else. I think this would be really good with pecans as well. Another dish I'm going to demo tonight, I'm using walnuts, but Again, it's a dish you can leave the nuts out and you're fine. All right, so this is ready to go in the oven. This will go in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes at 425 degrees preheated. So it's been preheated. I'm going to put this in the oven and we'll see what happens. This is live, so you never know. And I'm going to remember to set my timer. There we go. All right, so we got the brie going. So now let's move over to the dessert. What I'm going to make for you tonight is a simple 4-ingredient dessert that would be 3 ingredients if you don't use nuts. So it is sweet and salty almond bark, or actually tonight it's not, it's walnut bark. So sweet and salty chocolate bark, we'll call it that. So here's what you do. You buy do not use chips. Chocolate chips have an ingredient added to them to keep them solid that will not melt well. It's really awful and you will hate it if you try with chips. Buy decent chocolate. This is Ghirardelli chocolate. I use half white chocolate and half dark chocolate. I have found that it doesn't taste good with milk chocolate, especially with the white chocolate. I think dark and white together, looks prettier, which you'll see in a little while, but also I think it tastes better. This is 60% cacao dark chocolate. Actually, I kind of prefer slightly more, but 60% melts a little bit better. So you'll see I've already started prepping it. Essentially what you do is you break up the 2 different kinds of chocolate in random chunks and throw them on a baking sheet. And I've got the baking sheet lined with parchment paper. You need to do that because otherwise you'll be unhappy because it will stick. Even if you think it's nonstick, it will stick. So line it with parchment paper. And they don't have to be the same size. It's totally random with the sizes of these chips. All right. So what you do at that point is just make sure it's kind of distributed with white and dark around. And in just a little while, after we take the brie out of the oven, I'm going to stick this into the oven for just a couple of minutes to start the melting process. Now, if you're moving from a cold oven, you need to preheat the oven to maybe 250 degrees and let it stay in for about 5 minutes. But the chocolate, you don't want it to melt completely, but you want it to get super soft so that you can then manipulate it. So we're going to move this for just a second. I am going to transfer these almonds that I didn't use to the batter bowl. All right, so I'm going to use walnuts in this, and these are kind of walnut pieces, so they really don't need to be chopped up much. So I'm not actually going to use the chopper much. I'm just going to very carefully kind of hit the bigger pieces. If you have whole walnuts, you don't want tiny pieces for the most part on this. You want it to be slightly chunky when you make it. And honestly, that's kind of done. I mean, woo. So I'm going to move this aside. And in here, what I have in here is pink Hawaiian sea salt, but that just happens to be what I have. But what you want for this recipe is some kind of salt that's got large granules. You don't want anything tiny because it will just melt into the chocolate and it will be horrible, and you won't get that sort of wonderful crunch that you get when you put salt on chocolate. So you want something that's got relatively large grains on it that won't melt. So I'm going to take a look right now because we've got 6 minutes before the brie is done. Yeah, so while we're waiting for the brie to be done, because what I'll need to do is swap stuff out in the oven, let me give you a couple of tips on alternatives for this brie or camembert combination. So if you don't like the combination of brown sugar with Dijon mustard, one of the other recipes, and I'm actually going to post this recipe also tomorrow, is to use, it's called tangy pepper pecan brie. Essentially, you use, instead of the almonds, you use pecans. So again, just a half cup of pecans. You get 1 jalapeno pepper stem it and de-seed it, and then chop it up finely. And then you mix that with a 1/4 cup of apricot preserves. So what you've got, if you're from the Deep South, you'll know essentially we're making a quick version of a hot pepper jelly. And if you happen to have hot pepper jelly, just use that, because that's all you need. Is you want the sweet and the heat together. So I would say you can substitute for the almonds and the brown sugar and the Dijon. You can substitute a jalapeno and apricot preserves and pecans. I think that's a really nice combination. If you want to go with something more savory instead of something sweet, then go with sun-dried tomatoes and basil pesto. You would use about 2/3 of a cup of sun-dried tomatoes in oil, drain them and pat them dry, chop them up, and then add about a tablespoon of basil pesto. And instead of the nuts that we've already used, you would use pine nuts for that, since pine nuts are generally in basil pesto. But you could also use walnuts with that as well, and I think it would be fine. And Mary Kay, yes, I'll post these recipes tomorrow because it's pretty easy. The one with jalapenos is super easy. It's just a 1/4 cup of apricot preserves and 1 jalapeno pepper. I think that'll be easy. But I kind of like the idea of having a sweet version and a savory version. And the sun-dried tomato pesto version is really pretty awesome. I've tried that one before. You can use brie or camembert, and in fact, although I just threw it away, it's the brie that comes in these little round tins. So it's a 4-inch brie, and it's 8 ounces of brie. When you slice it in half, it goes a little bit further. Cool. All right, so we've got 3.5 minutes. So let's see if I missed anything on the dessert. No, I think I'm good on the dessert. So questions, if anybody has a question, type it in. And if not, I'll talk just a minute about what we talked about in the last live video, is about hosting a party. I've got a pad that I'm standing on, one of those things, and it keeps moving. Makes my back feel better to stand on it. So the issue of hosting a party is awesome, because what you have to do is pretty much nothing except invite your friends and engage with them. And what I'll do is work with you to come up with whether you want a theme, or whether there's certain products or certain recipes. You know, do you want a vegan focused party? Do you want to focus on cocktails and appetizers? Do you want to focus on a holiday, or do you just want to focus on let's just do whatever and have a good time and try a lot of different recipes? And because I'm getting better at this technology, I would love, for any party that you host that I'm a consultant for, I would love to be able to demonstrate recipes live. And with StreamYard, which is what I'm using tonight, I could bring you into the stream and talk with you, and people could watch us communicate with each other, and you could also be prepping, or someone else at the party could also join. So it's a nice tool to be able to have more interactivity in this virtual world. Depending on where you stream, like right now I'm streaming primarily to Facebook, but also to YouTube. On Facebook, I can see all of your comments as you're typing them in. So if somebody has a question, so let's see. So thank you, Chad. So Chad was commenting yum. So I can put that up on the screen so you see what somebody happened to say in the stream. So it's a good way if you're hosting a party and you know you have friends that are commenting on stuff, you can actually have me, you can click them onto the screen, or I can click them onto the screen. We're at about 1.5 minutes, so let me see how the brie is looking. I'm going to give it that extra 1.5 minutes so the bread gets a little bit browner. So while we're waiting, like I said, I only have another minute before we put the chocolate in the oven. Tonight, after I demonstrate the dessert, I'm going to show a quick video about cocktails, about how to sort of best practices on making cocktails. And the cocktail that I'm going to demonstrate for you is, I'm going to be demonstrating a perfect Manhattan. But if you have the ingredients around in your house, you will need either rye or bourbon. You will need vermouth, preferably sweet vermouth, but if you have both sweet and dry, awesome. And then if you've got bitters of some kind, those are the sort of 3 mandatory ingredients in a Manhattan. So I'm going to make a perfect Manhattan, but I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about variations on the Manhattan cocktail different variations like a regular Manhattan, a perfect Manhattan, a dry Manhattan, a reverse Manhattan, a black Manhattan, a brandy Manhattan, a Rob Roy, which is a form of Manhattan. So I'm going to give you some of those recipes tonight. All right, cool. We're right at the point where I can take the brie out and put the chocolate in. There we go. All right, I'm not going to let the chocolate stay in for long because I don't want it to cook. I don't want it to burn. Somebody asked me, can you do a marsala? I don't know. You mean, do you want me to demonstrate making a marsala at some point? Not tonight, but I'm happy to look up a good marsala. I have one somewhere, a good marsala. So let me know what you mean by doing a marsala, and I'll be able to answer the question a little bit better. All right, we're going to move this. I'm going to put that there. All right. Just to be safe, since I'm going to the pan's not going to be super hot, but it'll be a little bit hot, I'll put the pan here with the chocolate that's melting. Yeah, give it just another second. This brie looks awesome, and I guess it's going to be my dinner because I haven't eaten yet. So I'm going to be eating brie and French bread for dinner tonight. Questions. I know I've got people watching, so if there's anything you have a question about, let me know. I just want to give the chocolate another couple of minutes to soften before I show you. Okay, so yeah, so a good demo of a good marsala sauce. Yeah, let me write that down. And that gives me a really good excuse to use up part of my Benny's gift card that I got for Christmas to go out and buy some marsala at Benny's. So hey, thanks for asking that. I know, Mary Kay, I wish you were here to share the brie too. I wish somebody were here to share the brie, not just because I don't want to eat this whole brie by myself, but I'm so tired of being alone in my apartment. It's just making me crazy. But I will. I'll look into the marsala thing. Let me see who texted me because I think it's related to this. Yeah, I'll get back to them later. All right, let me check on this chocolate. Yeah. Let's see, it's the dark chocolate. Yes. All right, this is cool. All right. So here's the deal on this chocolate dessert. Right now, it still looks like they're kind of chunky. But what I like to do is take out I use a chopstick. You could use a fork, but make sure that the tines on the fork are relatively far apart. And then just begin to swirl through the chocolate. You want to make sure you get rid of all the chunks, and because you don't want the branding of the type of chocolate to be branded in there. You don't want to mix it too much because otherwise you'll create your own version of milk chocolate. But you do want to make sure that you've got a nice solid sheet of chocolate. There's one chunk there. Well, it's just going to be one chunky piece. Cool. So now you see you've got a nice swirly dark and white chocolate. So what you do is then just lightly sprinkle your nuts on top. And you see why you want them kind of chunky, because when you break it up, you're going to want everybody to be able to have little bits of nut. Now, again, if you're somebody who can't eat nuts, just leave them off. Or one of the thoughts that I had was, why not use something that's crunchy, because it is kind of nice to have that crunch. So maybe like Rice Krispies cereal. Sprinkle some Rice Krispies on top of it, and you'll still get that crunch. Now, here is the sea salt. Honestly, there are no proportions here because this is all about you deciding how much you want. So I'm just going to sprinkle the salt over. The goal is to not make it too salty, but you want to make sure that you've got enough salt that you get that beautiful combination of sweet and salty. I'm going to put just a little bit more. That's enough. So there you have it. Really simple. 4 ingredients if you use nuts, 3 if you don't. Dark chocolate and white chocolate in equal proportions. Some kind of nut if you like nuts sprinkled on top, and a sea salt of some kind that's got large grains. So I'm going to move this out of the way. What you do is let it come to room temperature and then put it in the refrigerator. And I'm going to show you the one I made last night. So like magic, there's one that's done. This has almonds on it. So what you'll see is it comes off of the parchment paper really easily, and it's in a big block. And the cool thing about this is you just start to break it up into random pieces. You can keep them as large as you want or as small as you want. A couple of years ago, I was kind of strapped for cash, and so I decided for Christmas I would just make a bunch of this for a lot of people. So I made a whole bunch of batches of this. I crunched them up and I put them in a nice little bag and tied it up, and it was a great Christmas gift. So there you have it, this beautiful swirly dark and white chocolate with sea salt and nuts. Oh my God, that's good. And now I have to eat all of this myself, which I'm not real sad about that. The good thing is I'm talking with my mouth full, my mother's rolling over in her grave, is you can freeze this. So put it in a Ziploc, take out a couple of pieces when you want them, and you can keep it frozen for a while. So there are the 2 food demos that I wanted to do for you tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video for you about cocktails, and I'm going to reset for my ability to be able to show you the techniques for making a good Manhattan. So while we're waiting, let's see. Here we go.
With our premium cocktail set, you have everything you need to make delicious, handcrafted cocktails in your own home. I'll show you how to shake a great cocktail, exactly when you're supposed to stir cocktails, and then I'll show you how to take a simple recipe and make it totally your own. Making cocktails isn't about knowing tons of recipes. It's about understanding one really simple ratio, 2-1-1. A well-balanced drink has 2 parts alcohol to 1 part sweetener to 1 part sour. Start with that basic ratio and a whole world of amazing flavor options opens up. Our set includes a recipe card that shows 9 classic cocktails made with this one ratio, plus tips for building your bar, making simple syrups at home, and some of the techniques I'm about to share with you now. First things first. You shake a cocktail when you want to combine alcohol with another liquid like fruit juice or syrup. Take a margarita, for example. It has lime juice, simple syrup, and tequila. Our premium cocktail set comes with a Boston shaker, which has a small cup that fits upside down in a larger cup to form a seal. Other shakers that have the strainer and cap as part of the lid can be really hard to remove when the shaker gets cold, but ours is always easy to open. Measure your ingredients into the large cup of the shaker with the jigger. The measure markings on the jigger are below the rim, so you don't make a mess when you measure ingredients. Only add the ice when you're ready to shake. Put the small cup on top of the larger cup at an angle so it makes a tight seal. Then shake it back and forth, and I mean really shake it. Our shaker is made of stainless steel, which will cool your drink faster, and unlike glass or plastic, you can feel when your drink is chilled through. To release the seal, either squeeze the rim of the larger cup until you hear air
Oops, something happened to my internet connection. Sorry about that. So we're gonna skip the rest of that video. I have no idea what the problem was. So I was getting ready to type to Mary Kay that yes, I am now going to have 2 pans of chocolate and a wheel of brie with a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, I haven't shown you the brie. Hold on. I'm going to show this to you here so you can see it. And after I make the cocktail, I'll move this out of the way and I'll cut a little piece of that off. Sorry for the technical glitch there. I have no idea what happened, but oh well. All right, so we are going to talk about the classic Manhattan cocktail. The basic classic Manhattan recipe is 2 ounces of whiskey. That's whiskey with an EY, as we say it in the United States and Ireland. Not whiskey with just a Y, as in Canada and Scotland. Long story. But whiskey, normally it's rye. Rye makes the best Manhattans. If you do not have rye, bourbon is great, but it will make the cocktail sweeter. Bourbon's made primarily with corn, which makes it sweeter as it ferments than rye. So if you like a sweeter cocktail, try a bourbon Manhattan, but we're going to do a rye Manhattan tonight. So the traditional recipe is 2 ounces of whiskey, in this case rye, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and then this is to taste. They say traditionally 2 dashes of bitters of some kind. I tend to use 4 because I like a little bit more of that flavor profile, but you know, go with what you want. So quick and easy, 2 ounces of whiskey, 1 ounce of vermouth, and a couple of dashes of bitters. That's a traditional Manhattan. A perfect Manhattan is almost exactly the same. The only difference is that instead of 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, you use a 1/2 ounce of sweet vermouth and a 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth. So you're making it a little bit less sweet. So you're still getting the flavor profile of that sweet vermouth, but you're toning it down with the dry. So I'm gonna mix a cocktail for you. Now, this is a cocktail, as you saw on the part of the video before it went away and I couldn't do it anymore, that with a cocktail that does not include fruit juices or syrups or citrus, you do not shake that cocktail, you stir it because you want it to not dilute so much. So I have ice in here. For the Manhattan cocktail, we'll start with the rye or bourbon, if that's what you have. And we're gonna do 2 ounces of that. So there's my 2 ounces of rye. This is the first time I've used this Lazy Susan. I'm kind of liking this. My favorite sweet vermouth is Carpano Antico. So I'm going to use a 1/2 ounce of Carpano. All right, that's a 1/2 ounce of Carpano. Then a 1/2 ounce, I like Dolan as my dry vermouth. I've tried a lot of different vermouths, and these are the 2 that I default to. Dolan has a sweet vermouth, and it's okay, but I have a tendency to like, yeah, Dolan has a sweet vermouth, but I tend to like Carpano better. So there's my 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth. And for bitters, today, we can play around a little bit. What I pulled out of my cabinet, I tend to like Fee Brothers bitters, but there's many different kinds. We have regular bitters, which are kind of like Angostura bitters that most of you might know. I have black walnut bitters and orange bitters. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to do a combination of orange, 2 generous dashes, and black walnut. I think black walnut gives a really nice flavor profile to whiskey. 2. All right, there's 2. All right. And I will garnish with a Luxardo cherry. But we've got our ingredients in the cocktail shaker, and you want to just stir it gently. Different mixologists will tell you how many times you should stir your cocktail. I usually go about 20-ish. And you'll notice the spoon kind of moves effortlessly along the edge of this because it's a specific cocktail spoon. And this is what's called a Hawthorne strainer. You really want to make sure you have one of these in your home bar. If you don't buy the cocktail kit from Pampered Chef, which has all of the stuff in it, including the muddler, I think it's a great kit. Make sure that at least you go out and find one of these somewhere, because the Hawthorne strainer is great because it just gets rid of anything that might be sediment in the drink or chips of ice. But what I like about it is it's got this spring. The way you use it is you put it on top and then you press it up against the side with this finger, and then you pour. And that strains the cocktail out. And then you garnish with a Luxardo cherry, with a lemon peel, an orange peel, whatever you might like. In this case, an orange peel would have been great because I have orange bitters. But let me taste it and make sure that I did it right. Oh yeah, that's an awesome, awesome cocktail. So I'm gonna move the Lazy Susan out of the way. I'm going to bring back, well, I'm just gonna use this. I always cook with a towel over my shoulder, so just in case you need it. This is all right. So I've got a couple of tips about Manhattans, but before that, I've got to try this brie. Look how soft that is. That was 10 minutes in the oven. It's all gooey, and I like doing it on the sheet pan because I've had this for so long, it's like totally non-stick. Let's try this. There we go. Oh. Well, I'm gonna have to use a paper towel. Yum. So, great recipe for brie. That's really, really good. So here's a couple of tips on the Manhattan. I gave you that one recipe, and I'll make sure I put this on the page tomorrow. Typical Manhattan: 2 ounces of whiskey, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, a couple of dashes of bitters. Perfect Manhattan, just divide the 1 ounce of vermouth into half sweet and half dry. You, however, can make a dry Manhattan, like you can make a dry martini. So you could basically just use all dry vermouth instead, and that's really good for people who just do not like sweet cocktails, because the sweet vermouth, it does have a nice sweet profile. A reverse Manhattan is an interesting one. You really have to like vermouth, because essentially you're reversing the quantities. You're doing 2 ounces of vermouth and 1 ounce of rye instead of the other way around. So that's for the people who really love the flavor profile of either sweet or dry vermouth. So you could even try a reverse perfect Manhattan and do 1 ounce of sweet, 1 ounce of dry, and 1 ounce of rye. That becomes an equal parts cocktail. Easy, easy peasy. One of my very favorite riffs on a Manhattan is a black Manhattan. That one is always made with rye, but instead of vermouth, you use Amaro. If you don't know what Amaro is, look it up. I love Amaro. It's a great bitter Italian liqueur. So a black Manhattan is rye and Amaro with bitters. If you want more bitterness. The Amaro is bitter, so you might not use bitters in that one. A brandy Manhattan, I had never even heard of a brandy Manhattan until I moved to the Midwest, and apparently it's a thing in Wisconsin. So essentially you're just basically substituting brandy for the rye and using sweet vermouth, and poof, you have a Wisconsin kind of cocktail, the brandy Manhattan. And then finally, a cocktail called the Rob Roy is made with scotch instead of rye. So you use 2 ounces of scotch and then the vermouth. The trick here for me, and this is my personal preference on a Rob Roy, is use blended scotch. Never, never use a really good high-end single malt scotch in a cocktail like this. That for me is totally blasphemous, because if you're buying a fantastic bottle of Ardbeg or a Glenfiddich or something like that, you don't want to mix it with something else. You just want to enjoy you just want to enjoy it. So I would say get a nice blended scotch and use that in a Rob Roy. And one of the more interesting riffs on a Manhattan, if you are able to do it, is to try to figure out a way to infuse smoke into your Manhattan. A lot of times you can actually light something like a cinnamon stick on fire and invert a glass over it, fill the glass with smoke and put it down, mix your cocktail, and then turn it over and pour it in. And then you get that sense of smoke. So there's different ways to get a smoky profile if you like that, but I wouldn't use smoky peaty scotch because that's just too good to drink by itself. So, you know, there you go. So I think that's it for tonight. So I want to make sure, and thank you, Gail, for coming in. I'm sorry you missed it, but I can send you everybody. I'm going to put the link to the YouTube version of this video up tomorrow. So are there any last questions before I sign off for the evening? I'm checking while I'm looking for questions. Friday, I'm going to do another live stream at 6 o'clock, and that's the one where I'm going to be demonstrating one of my absolute all-time favorite vegan recipes. I was vegan for a number of years in the late 90s, and because of that, I stocked up on vegan cookbooks, and I became a really good vegan cook. And what I found over the years is that all of those recipes are fantastic. If you're eating meat anyway, there's still great side dishes. But if you need to have a meal that's a vegetarian or vegan meal, some of the recipes, vegan recipes, are extraordinarily good. And the one that I'm going to demo for you on Friday is, I think, my favorite of all the vegan recipes I ever concocted. I found a version of it in a cookbook many years ago and then spent years tweaking it and changing it. So it's really my own version of a recipe that I found in the 90s. But if you want to try along with me on Thursday, tomorrow sometime, I will post the ingredient list, but I can give it to you off the top of my head now so you can see if you've got it in your house. It's brown rice, lentils. The spices are basically curry-based spices, but also turmeric and ginger. Let's see, an onion, a Granny Smith apple. It needs to be a firm tart apple. If you eat raisins, you can leave the raisins out if you're a raisin hater. I'm going to leave sunflower seeds out because normally I put them in, but I couldn't find any today, so forget the sunflower seeds for this recipe. I think that's the main ingredients. Oh, and bouillon of some kind, because you do need to have to rehydrate the lentils and the brown rice. You need some kind of nice vegetable bouillon. So if you've got those ingredients in your house, you should have most of them if you're somebody who cooks vegan a lot anyway. Brown rice, lentils, an onion, a nice firm tart apple if you have it, but it does help. Basic curry kind of spices, and raisins if you want them. I put them in, but you can always leave the raisins out. That's really the bulk of the recipe. There's a few other things that I'm totally forgetting, I'm sure, but minor things. But that's sort of the core. So I'm going to demonstrate as much of it as possible live. I'll move the camera over so you can see me cooking. It won't be finished because it takes too long for rice and lentils to cook, but you'll get to see the preparation process. So tune in on Friday for a little bit of vegan cooking. And in the meantime, please make sure you visit my Cooking with Tommy VIP page. This whole week, I'm hosting my virtual launch party for my Pampered Chef business. So please feel free to look through the catalog. Hopefully you will purchase something before Sunday when I close the party down. And over the next couple of days, I'll be doing some giveaways on the page. When I signed up as a consultant, I got a kit with a lot of free product in it, and maybe 7 or 8 items I already had. So I'm like, yay, I can actually give those away to my friends as giveaway gifts. So I'll be doing some raffles and some giveaways for the rest of the week. So I want to say thank you again to everybody for joining me. This is my new sort of side hustle, and I'm very excited about it because I love to eat. As you can tell, this brie is melting all over the place, but I'm going to be eating this for dinner. But I love to cook, and I love to talk about cooking, and I love all my friends. So this is a way for me to stay connected when we can't be physically connected to each other. So let me look at the last comment. Yay, Mary Kay. Yeah, I like giveaways too. So thank you everybody for watching. And if you click this little outro video I'm going to show you now has a link to my YouTube channel. And if for some reason you miss it, send me a message. I'll send you the link. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have a chance. All right, thanks everybody. And I will see you live again, 6 o'clock Central, 2 days from now on Friday night. Cheers. Oh, wait. Cheers.